World peace and prosperity for all people in all nations. Thank you for coming today and making this a wonderful, wonderful event. The best event ever. And
We always say that, but it's
and I have to thank
you.
Yusa for the baklava. That went a long way. Yeah, that was very good.
That was the.
So now is the time we have a roundtable discussion because, as was said many times, it's all of us. We all have service and we all believe in service, and so we're gonna have each of the presenters just give their impressions of the day and what's in their hearts, and then we'll open it up to everybody else. We want to start, Yusuf?
Oh, I thought they were gonna ask us questions.
Well, we're just gonna, you can say just a couple
Okay.
minutes, and then we'll go through the panel, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments.
I mentioned earlier about the reign of the goddess, and I counted faces today, and we have about 50 women to 10 men. So, welcome to the goddess.
That is almost always my experience. The goddess, it's the goddesses that come out and hopefully bring that light back to the gods. In the Hindu tradition, the gods, meaning those deities who are male, have virtually no power without the female. It is the unity of the male power with the female power, which is called Shakti. And unless, it's like having a lamp that's not plugged in. What good is it, right? So the female aspect of divinity, so let's say Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, is mated with Vishnu, the great preserver of the universe. But Vishnu doesn't work unless Lakshmi is plugged in. And so it never surprises me when I'm at a gathering, a spiritual gathering of any kind. And our meditations, we meet every Sunday at Marywood for our meditation service. And I would say 90% of the time, women outnumber the men. So clearly you got it going on. You know something that they don't. And so it's your responsibility to bring that light in. So good luck.
No pressure there. I think the key to the whole thing is balance. The one thing that has struck me today is that whether we be males or females in this incarnation, it's all about balance. And even biblically, let us make them in our image, male and female, in the Aramaic translation of the Bible. So I think the key to the future here is that we all find that balance, and that's part of mastery on this earth plane. And I think a lot of us have it going on. I think going hand in hand with that, I love the idea of there being no leadership, no big cheese, for lack of a better way to describe it, because I do think we're all walking this journey together. And I think the idea of hero worship, where the person who becomes the anointed one, so to speak, becomes more important than the message and more important than us all finding our connection to our own divinity. The message gets lost in translation. So I love the idea that we are all walking this together, and it's not about titles, and it's not about who wears the robe and who doesn't, or who has the connection to God and who has to go through someone else to find that connection for themselves. I think that ship sailed a long time ago. So I think we're all on the right path, and we've just got to give it a little more time.
Yeah.
I think we have a responsibility of being the stone, and we take a stone away from this event, or event like this, and then we tell somebody about the conference or talk about spirituality or pass on something that you heard today, and that pebble hits the water and it creates ripples. It really does. And this is what we're here to do. And I learned so much today, and it was just so gratifying and so wonderful. Of course, I always say the greatest conference ever, but this was, and we've been doing this for many, many years. This one just was so multidimensional and multifaceted, and touched our heart and opened us up to being ready to take these messages and to share them. And then that person shares it with the next person or the family person or whatever it might be. But this thing with the women outweighing the number of men here, this is a feminine millennium. And Alice Bailey, way back many, many years ago, said when we reached 2000 and so, well, 2 is feminine, and we have 1,000th power of the feminine came in the year 2000, and look at it. And this happens in our conferences. You ladies are taking your power, and we are proud of it, by the way, because we do our best, but it is what it is. And so we thank you for being here today, and to take this home and take this to wherever you want to and share it, because then it will spread and hit more people than ever. So thank you for making this so wonderful today.
Thank you, John. So I just have to say it. Men have really messed things up badly. I mean, when we look at what's going on, I mean, how could it possibly be any worse than it is? And you look at the institutions and how they've developed. You look at, as the slide said, where the wealth is in the world. You look at other countries where women are, either in abject poverty or they are downtrodden in so many ways, and they have been robbed of their futures. The key, of course, to that is education. The key to education and opportunity on all levels. And because of my Baha'i beliefs, many years ago, it's going on 39 years now, I started an effort which I considered to be simply a service project, just something that I would do. And it happened very inadvertently, and it's a long story, and I'm not going to go into it, but I will just tell you this, that I was asked to work with women who are in transition. And women in transition are women that in many cases were coming out of domestic abuse. They were coming out of rape, incest, and just many horrible scenarios, which was not that far from my own childhood and my experience in my family and with my mother. And so that became a motivating force, became very important to me to be able to work with and to serve women in a way that was educational and uplifting. And so I began to do that. First of all, was just working to empower women, to have them come to a sense of their own power, their own greatness. There's a Baha'i writing that says that men in the future will say to women, "Blessed are ye, blessed are ye, blessed are ye, because within thee is every spiritual capacity at the highest level that it can be." That we will come to that day, into that realization as women begin to step into their own sense of power and take leadership, equal leadership in the world. As I said earlier, when that happens, peace will unfold as a result of that.
Anybody else would like to make any comments?
I have a question.
Sure, Rose.
The government is broken, and now we're coming up to, we're going to vote. And Trump over here, and 50,000 people on this side. When I think of voting, I think if I go Democratic, if I vote a Democratic ticket, The Democrats are going to take over. They will not do anything the Republicans want, and the Republicans are not going to do anything that the Democrats want. So we will still have a totally divided Congress and Senate. Just anybody on the on the panel that can help me. I don't know what to do. I just don't watch.
Okay, there's a, right there, Yosef, there. Thank you.
Got it? It's not about gender. It's about attitude. It takes a long time to educate every woman in the world. It takes a long time to educate every man in the world. It instantly changes things when you change attitudes. When we start looking at the feminine as the goddess, the giver of life, the birther, the compassionate, all you have to do is watch a mother with the child, the suckling, and men come through that. It's not about just the women. We become attached to the mother, but the mother is the birther. And as far as government, you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. It's not about a new president. We can get rid of this one and it doesn't matter. They got rid of Kennedy, they got rid of Luther King, it doesn't change anything. It's in here. You have to change the attitude of the people so that it's about what's important for people, not what's important for corporations. And it's just simple as that. Once you change that attitude, then you can go forward and the ripples that John is talking about begin to flow. But if you, sorry?
Maybe I don't vote? Is that what it's...
Oh, no. I don't care if you vote or don't vote or who you vote for. I'm just saying that when we come to the mindset, then being creators, somehow it's a collective of all of us that got the world to what it is now. So we need to click in our minds a change of attitude and then begin to go towards more humanistic ways. And then you find the solutions, because no book, no religion, nobody's going to give you all the answers. You have the answers if your mindset is in alignment with your spirit and your compassion. And women have a way of doing that.
No, vote. Okay? You need a ride, you call me. All right, now that we've settled that, certainly government is an imperfect instrument because it is made up of imperfect people. But there is imperfect and there is crash and burn suicide. We need to move from crash and burn suicide to simply imperfect. And how that will happen is when enough people become somewhat enlightened. And I say somewhat enlightened. I'm not saying that everybody has to become a Buddha for this to transformation to take place. But when we move from the idea of purely self-serving to the serving of others, when we are able, and this is starting, and this is very exciting, at least for me it is. There has only been one side that has, you all know what a talking stick is, right, in the American Indian tradition. There has only been one side that has held the talking stick when it comes to religion and spirituality. The other side hasn't even attempted to grab the stick. And now we are finding that spirituality and humanism are being more openly brought out in conversations. So this one side that sees, and by the way, the side that has a talking stick, very patriarchal, very patriarchal. Now we're seeing the other side, and I don't know if they would describe themselves as matriarchal, but when you look at the values that they have versus the patriarchal, you'll see that they are probably more in line with what we espouse here. All right, and forgive me for the generalization, there may be people who disagree with that. But from what I hear when I'm at these are the values that, again, seem more matriarchal. Much more concerned about compassion towards those who are suffering, much more concerned about those who have been left behind in our economy, much more concerned about the rest of the world. That's what I see. Now, if everything goes the way I would like November of 2020, we're still not going to have paradise. And specifically to your point about the fact that one side won't work with the other, when both sides realize that their constituents want things to go in a certain way, you will find more cooperation. You will find, because we have had it before. We have had cooperation in government. So as imperfect as it is, we know that it's possible. But unfortunately, what has happened is there has been a real concerted movement of one side to demonize the other. This happened 20, 30 years ago, where it was a strategy. We will call the people we don't like this, that, and the other. We will use these buzzwords to indicate that if you support this other side, you run the risk of being a bad American, not patriotic. We need to counter that. Again, the talking stick has only been in one hand for the longest time. So yes, absolutely vote, and try to view the challenges we have, and it is a challenge in itself, but try to view the challenges as dispassionately as possible, and don't let them steal your peace. And darn if I didn't say all of that in the most nonpartisan way possible.
My concern, the system is broken, government is broken. My concern is we stop introducing religions into government. It has no place, and it becomes political, and then it becomes divisive. So again, we have to go to the attitude. We have to stop promoting religions into government, and we need to have government deal with what government is supposed to deal, with the health and safety of the people.
As metaphysically minded people, we know that this is not a chaotic universe. God energy is perfect. So even though it has looked very chaotic, especially in the last several years, there's always balance there. Balance will always be restored. And so where we have just seen, as Fred just pointed out, a very patriarchal society for the last few years, we know that the pendulum must swing equally in the opposite direction. So we are looking to bring back in that more nurturing feminine energy in this next election. It's 2020. There are 2 twos. So we're getting that feminine energy back. So when you think of what would create balance, which is the major life lesson on this earth plane for every single incarnate being, is to learn balance in all things. What might in your mind, without trying to seem political, be the opposite of what we've just gone through, because we're looking now to create the balance in the swing of the cosmic pendulum. And so vote early, vote often. I'm kidding. If you do that, they'll put you in jail. But we have a responsibility to be the physical being that pulls the lever in a way that in your mind is going to help establish balance, so that we get into that divine feminine, we begin to worry about the welfare of others and the welfare of the planet, especially the planet. This Earth School can't close, because all these souls that need these life lessons, if the school closes, we're done like dinner. So we need to keep the planet a viable place, and we need to worry about what needs to be done by cooperating with other nations to make sure that the Earth School thrives. So just kind of storing that in the back of your mind, know that your soul essence knows what we need to do.
I believe that anything is possible. And the word that I have not found more powerful than this one I'm going to say, I haven't found it. The word is pray. Pray is a number of God consciousness. I am a numerologist, and when we pray, we move into that God consciousness within us. And anything is possible. Pray for the highest good, for the highest number of people on this planet. Don't judge them. Don't say anything negative about them. Just put them in the same vibration and project that light from our God consciousness. Because we are in the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius. As I said in my talk, it's not this whole, this energy is positive. Stay positive. No matter what happens, stay positive. Think of other people first, but just pray every day for what you want to see accomplished. And as the founder of the Coptic Fellowship, Hamid Bey said many times, I believe, I believe, I believe. Greatest man I've ever known. I wish you could have known him. He was incredible. I had the honor of knowing him. He was beyond the beyond Ananda. That's why Coptic exists today, because of him. And when I say he said, I believe, he did. And we believed we did the best we could. But we went to Hamid Bey, who was the greatest man I've ever met, and also the humblest man I've ever met. And he taught all of us to be humble. And this is why we should strive for humility, love, and service. It's all about the other person. That's the key here. And we are the instrument to touch him. Anything is possible.
So I want John to know that in 1968 in Louisville, Kentucky, I was at a party with the Cast of Hair.
All right.
The Cast of Hair, the play that, Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. Yeah. No, I was not one of the cast. I was a friend of the man that was in charge of bringing acts into Louisville, and there was a party at his house with the Cast of Hair. Enough said about that, because you can probably, your minds are, it must have been an interesting party. Right? It was indeed, yeah, much harmony and understanding were going on. Yeah, so, yeah. So anyway, so I just a couple of thoughts, because whenever a question like this comes up, there's always the possibility of contention or disagreement, because this has been such a contentious. How many of you have blocked people on your Facebook page? Yeah, two hands up back there. I mean, I wrote something about, like an essay about the violence in words, and just how much violence there is in the words that we are speaking and sharing with each other. And then that gave me an idea to kind of take that into a concept of nonviolence in art, because a lot of the art was, art forms were becoming very violent. And so I want to commend all of my co-panelists. Is this a panel? This is a panel, right? Okay. We just wandered in off the street. Yeah. I don't know who these people, I mean, there's a bus coming through, right? For the remarks, because, you know, a lot of wisdom and yet very, very kind and very peaceful, the words that have been spoken. So I want to say that. When two men argue, or when two women argue, both are wrong. Argument is the destroyer of unity. I said earlier, and a lot of people think, you know, we need to do this, this, and this in order to achieve unity. And actually, what we need to do is start with unity, put aside our opinions, put aside our argument, unify. In other words, put unity above everything else. Every opinion we have, every belief we have, unity is more important. Unity is more powerful. Unity will then give birth to peace. And we have to allow that process to occur. You know, just briefly, and I think I've said this before, but you take hydrogen, you take oxygen, they're fire elements. You know, you don't smoke when you're on oxygen in the hospital. Okay, I mean, you know, we had problems with the dirigibles, the blimps, you know, with hydrogen. They were highly flammable, and yet you put them together and you get water. And you bring people together of differing beliefs, of different ethnic groups. You bring all of those people together, and you have any idea how powerful we can become as people on Earth, as humanity on Earth, if we could simply begin to do that. That process is in process. It's happening all around us. I just want to tell you, though, that, you know, your life here is very short. It is the blink of an eye. And you're not going to see this. This is going to take a long time.
Hello?
There she is.
So I just have a question. During the last election, I happened to be in Costa Rica when the election happened. So it was very interesting being in another country when that election came about. And when I came back, I went to a class down at Unity Village, and we were asking the teacher of this class, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, and everyone's worried about all the white supremacists and all the things that are just coming out and all this stuff. And he gave us an answer. And I came back to church the next week, and we happened to have a mystic who taught the lesson that day, this Mary Reed. And she didn't know this guy in Unity. And people asked her that question too. And they both said exactly the same thing. Oh, don't be upset and worried about this. This has to happen. All this hatred and all these things that are underneath need to come up and come out, and then there can be peace in the world. So that just really gave me hope when I had people from two completely different. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it helped me to settle down a little bit about it.
It's like you have to crash and burn before you grow out. And it's about changing the attitudes from what we have to what could be. It changes everything else. You can't get into a part and change that and make a difference. You can just sustain it for a while longer. The issue is, are we relating to all humans in the same vein? And if we have an attitude that deals with that part of the problem, then we can persuade or have people from that consciousness get elected, and then you can make government work. You can't be without government, obviously, but the question is, what is the motive of the government and the representatives of the government? So we have to clean the consciousness that we have and revert it so that our values, the referendum I spoke about, this is a work that should take place as if we're creating a new constitution. We have to have a referendum of who are we as human beings? What is ahead of us? What is our goals? What is the values? It's not about winners and losers, because if you have anybody that lose, you lost. It's an attitudinal thing, and we need to work on that. And I think the reverberations. When I was county commissioner in Oakland County, they brought the Silver Dome to my committee to approve. That's back in the 70s, in 1970, yeah. And I had my committee turn it down. And the media, the TV interviewed me, Commissioner Bearcat, what do you have against the stadium? I said, well, in ancient Rome, they used to pay taxpayer money to build stadiums to feed the Christians to the lions. And now you want us to use taxpayer money to build a stadium to feed the lions to the Christians. And they came out with headlines the next day. Bearcat wants to feed Christians or put lions against. It's crazy. We have to come from an attitude of humanness that implies to all of life. Life is sacred, the animals and the trees, the mountains and the seas.
That reminds me, the Sunday after the last presidential election, I had the great honor of being the guest speaker at the Unitarian Church in Muskegon. And it was a somber day. And part of their liturgy is that people in the congregation will come up front and express the need for prayer or whatever it is they want to say. It's kind of an open mic for about 5 minutes. Well, this turned out to be more like 10, 15 minutes. And people came up, they expressed a variety of negative emotions, of sadness, of crying, of pain. I was really afraid that within the next couple of minutes, they were going to make a suicide pact. And I had to deliver the sermon. I know, lucky me. I was there a few months ago and reminded him, oh, by the way, the last time I was here, this is what happened. Here's something to remember as well, something I learned a few years ago. I read an article in a magazine that always stuck with me, because I do believe in political activism. We would not have the America that we have now if not for the activism of people like Martin Luther King, people who were opposed to the Vietnam War. All of those things I think were good. But what this magazine did was it studied the activists themselves. And what it found out is that those people who were completely materialist, those people who did not have a spiritual foundation, did not fare well. And as a matter of fact, many of them did commit suicide. Remember Abby Hoffman, perfect example. Abby Hoffman committed suicide because he did not see the country turning in the direction he wanted it to go. Another one was a gentleman by the name of Gus, and the last name is escaping me right now, but he was an activist opposed to homelessness. He committed suicide. And they showed a couple of other examples, but those are the two that stood out. And it essentially, the conclusion was that those people who are the most successful as human beings and as activists are those people who have a strong foundation of spirituality, whether it's organized religion or disorganized religion, or just pure, spiritual but not religious, whatever it is, because those people are in it for the long haul. And like Moses, they may get to the mountaintop, but they may not cross over. I'm fully prepared to do the work I feel needs to be done, and I might not get to the other side of the mountain, but I'm in it for the long haul. So those of us who feel compelled to be a part of whatever movement you want to be whatever movement you want to be involved in, it has to be with that attitude of karma yoga, meaning you're doing it because it is the right thing, not because necessarily you're going to see results. It is, I also believe, as you just said, Reverend, a few minutes ago, essentially it's our karma. We are in this boat because of what we as a society created, and it's up to us to get out of it.
At seminary, we had a discussion in the ministerial ethics class that I taught about bad sermons. And, what do we do if somebody comes to our church and delivers a bad sermon? And I said, you know what? The worst sermon you ever hear or that your congregation will ever hear is the best sermon to hear at that moment. Because what does it do? It compels you to reassess your own values about certain things and to reassess your own personal philosophy about whatever the subject matter was. So we're seeing mirrors right now. Who taught me about mirrors? This gentleman over here. We're having mirrored to us the things that are calling out for healing the most. And so when we hear these Looney Tune things on television and we see these things that make us just want to hit ourselves in the head with a brick, it's a call to direct some healing energy in that general direction. Because there's something there that's calling out for change and calling out for healing. So as horrific as sometimes things appear to be, it's a call to action because it compels us at that moment to say, thank you for showing me the way I used to be in some previous life. And I'm now going to direct some healing energy here so that this pattern can once and for all be broken. And I think that becomes our job at this moment.
The number, or the letter for this whole concept of mirroring is the letter R. So pray has one R. Whatever you pray for is mirrored into the cosmos, into the consciousness. The word prayer has two R's. We got two R's. If you have an R in your name, there's some intensity of mirroring going on. And as you emotionally evaluate people, circumstances, and conditions, and you've got emotional feeling toward it, that's you from another lifetime. So that's how powerful that letter R is, and being in the Aquarian age with those R's is so important. And the best thing to deal with R, if you're having a problem with somebody, is to forgive them. It's the most powerful tool we have. Forgiveness. Forgive him, Father, he knows not what he does. Who said that? We know. It was Jesus. It was one of the greatest things he ever gave us to do. So that's the important thing. Now you'll be thinking about ours a lot when you see people's names. But don't say a word.
So what I'm hearing from my co-panelists is importance of education and change. And we a lot of talk about, how do we face these tests and difficulties in our society and in our culture, and how do we do it in a way that is spiritually responsible and adding something positive to the conversation, elevating the conversation among people. And I'm reminded of a friend of mine. His name is Kevin Locke. He is Sioux. He is a cultural representative for the Lakota Sioux Nation. And I overheard him once at a talk, and he said that he would rather educate children than try to change adults. And in my life, I mean, I heard that, and it really touched my heart. And so in my life, I do educate adults. I own a post-secondary school, vocational school, and I educate adults. But in my heart, what I'm really doing is working with children and junior youth and youth almost every day. I'm not alone in that. My dear wife, Ginny, is doing it right by my side. Deb, where are you back there? Raise your hand. So she is as well. You know, I'm at an age where most people my age would have already retired, and I found a new career. And that career is to take these values that we're talking about today and these virtues and to try to help to instill them, to be a mentor, to be a model for these young people, because there's a lot of craziness going on and they're seeing a lot of adults behaving badly. And so it's very important that they have these opportunities. How many of you here are teachers? Oh, half of you. Okay. See, somehow I knew that was gonna happen. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, it would be nice at our age if we could retire and walk away. I don't think we can. I don't think we talk about how do we counter what's happening politically in this country. It's because we're just going to have to arise. We're going to have to, return, to the struggle. And we're going to have to increasingly work with these young people, because I'm looking around the room, and some of you look maybe sooner than me, are not going to be here much longer. Did I say that? Yeah, I didn't look at John. Okay. But, or Yusuf down there, I didn't look down that way. Okay. But I'm just, and no one knows, of course, and I forgive me for what I just said. I was trying to be funny. But that's the point. And I just find in my own heart that I cannot go off someplace and sit in a condo on the ocean and play golf. That I have no intention whatsoever of ever retiring, of ever walking away from this for even one moment. And if anything, the more difficult it gets, the harder I'm going to fight.
Better over the hill than under it.
At 84, I've had several careers. One of them was in private practice as a psychotherapist. And I had on my wall two cards. One is the table between me and the patient, and one on the wall. And on the wall it said, "It is better to build children than to repair adults." And that comes. And the other one was, my job is to talk myself out of a job. Because if I repair you, you're done. So, and really, that's where it's at. How are we dealing with children? How is it that we could spend $3 billion more to increase the nuclear weapons and take away from the lunch meats and the children's luncheons? And how is it that one teacher in a school barely makes a living, and another teacher in a college, like the coach, $12 million? So our priorities are skewed, and we have to stop dickering. If anybody's in an argument lost, the reason is arguments don't solve anything. It's how do you smooth the bottom line so that it speaks to every human being. And whether it's you dealing with it, the welfare lady, the baby, the education, if our values are structured for improvement, then we don't have to fix people. But that takes a long time. What we can do instantly is move into that mindset, begin to think from that consciousness. And that's the ripples John talked about. And we can begin to infest the world. Because negativity is infectious. If somebody's negative at you, it makes you want to be negative. But kindness is also infectious. So the question is, what are we focusing on?
I have a question. I have a question.
Sure, yes, I know. I'm coming to you. All right, well, this will be our final question.
Yes. Hi. Everybody's doing such a great job in how you're answering things and communicating, and I'd really like to know how to deal with the NRA and mentally ill people.
Well, the two are not mutually exclusive. No. I'm not sure what you mean by how to deal with, okay, don't join. That, okay. I mean, that's one way to deal with them, not to join them. The NRA, remember, the NRA really started as a noble organization. If people aren't aware, they go back to the 19th century, and one of the things that they were emphatic about was gun safety. And unfortunately, it grew into not just a grassroots organization encouraging sportsmanship, hunting, and personal safety, but they became a lobbying group for the industry. And that's where we have our issues, and certainly the influence they have over our politicians. But in terms of what we can do, I would say if we supported politicians who were very supportive of what the vast majority of Americans want, we wouldn't have to worry about that as much, and perhaps the NRA can be reformed and go back to what it was, which, as I say, I think their mission was very noble. As far as what I think you might be asking was about gun control and mentally ill people, right? I mean, so should people who are mentally challenged have weapons?
Yeah.
I don't know that I have all of the wisdom, nor do I have the psychiatric or psychological training to answer that question, because there are some people who might have minor issues, and should they be banned from self-defense? All right, especially if they are in a profession that might make them more vulnerable. So what I would hope, my way of doing it, would be to support those people who probably know better than I, but make a case for me to support you that makes sense and is compassionate. So that's the very best I can do off the cuff like this.
We're going to wrap it up here.
Yeah. You want to take one and pass it down there? Or pass these over to that side of the room?
Can I say one more thing?
Of course you may.
So, Alex, I wrote an essay on this, and I can send it to you. And it's specifically about, we all live in a house. And in the house, there are some people that have special challenges and special needs. And so wouldn't we go around the house and make sure that electrical outlets and scissors and knives and things like that they might hurt themselves with would be put away? And so I'll send you that. I think you'll find a good answer in it. Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming. It's just been a wonderful day, just
And thank John and the crew for what they've done.
definitely. Yeah, let's give everybody a round of applause.